This is a really complicated bill, and as has been said, we are in urgency and we have not had a committee stage. And members opposite may laugh, but actually when we are looking at how to get around the amendments, it involves going through multiple pieces of earlier legislation and also multiple subsections within this bill as well as into regulations. Now these are all things that we will be asking a lot of questions about, but I would like first to invite the House to consider a framework where we can just look sort of globally at what's happened here and then come down, as myself and my colleagues will go through step by step through the legislation. And what we've seen, for those who are watching at home and picking up on this, is really quite sinister in my view, because things have been done back to front. Yesterday we were told there was going to be a bill that would change some accommodation allowances because of what was called double dipping, even though it was both a person with a tenancy or a homeowner and then, a tenancy or another boarder in their house claiming, so it wasn't anyone individually double dipping. But we were told then that this bill today was going to be the enabling legislation for that, and all the notes and things, including even the RIS, purport to be really looking at just that enabling power of the bill that went through yesterday. But as we have gone through this bill in great detail today, what we've seen is something far more sinister, which is amendments to the Social Security Act, which crucially not only require mandated 52-week reviews on a series of benefits that have not been specified. In fact, only the exemptions are specified, and it's very, very difficult to ascertain what they are and whether regulatory powers apply both to making of benefits or changing of those benefits, which has questions. But also, crucially, in clause 310C, subsection 4, there is a new phrase that says, if the beneficiary fails to comply with a requirement under this section, MSD must suspend, and then it goes on to say their benefit. And it's really difficult to find what day applies, because that relates to subsection 1 and subsection 4, which talks about the end of the day before the relevant deadline. And we will be having questions about that, because we would like to know actually if the Minister herself can apply the legislation in a meaningful way so that she has clarity. One of the tests in jurisprudence is that law must be fair and clear, and it's pretty difficult to find your way around this one. We've heard in the first readings how this is, from the government members, and certainly the government statement, that this is a facilitator to try to make sure that there is clarity and certainty about what entitlements people are getting. But actually, when you look at the legislation in here, it's a very punitive bill. And we've seen additional words, and we will interrogate this again, where it not only talks about, say, in a subsection A, that this is about ensuring people get their entitlements, but in a subsection B, and making sure they don't get their entitlements if they're not entitled to them. Now, the fact that the government has bothered to articulate the bill in this way, I think shows a clear intent that this is, in our view, beneficiary bashing. There's probably a better legal word for it. We have not had submissions. We have had commentary over the last 24 hours, because this is all being very rushed, from the Salvation Army and also from the Law Society. And I'll just quote from the Salvation Army, which says, the bill will make things a lot worse for those we support. It will push a lot more people into poverty. It will create a lot of more barriers and difficulties for those we support to be able to access the help they need. And the Law Society says it raises significant concern about how the use of automated systems will apply where the sanction provisions involve some sort of evaluative judgment, for example, those relating to money management and community work. Now, so there's two clear parts to this, and Mr Chair, as I say, we do not want to filibuster today, but I do want to point out that the regulatory, the RIS that relates to this was not really referenced yesterday. Yesterday we looked at the supplementary regulatory impact statement, because that pertained to the accommodation supplement. The RIS on this actually says in a footnote, and I can allude to it later, that the accommodation supplement does not apply. I think it's on page 4, because that will come at a later stage. So we have not even had a chance to ventilate, Mr Chair, if I may finish, we have not had a chance to ventilate the concerns that are in the primary RIS, which are really not about the accommodation supplement at all, but much more about these other benefits, which are difficult to find out what they are, which have very strong punitive elements to them, and which also have an automated element to them, which is really concerning. And so what we would like to do as we go through is ask questions, particularly when we see that there are redacted parts of the RIS as well. So, for example, I can refer the Minister to the fact that MSD actually says it already uses AI for discretionary payments, but it does also say in the RIS on page 3, it's possible for the use of AI to entrench existing inequalities in the welfare systems, as these can be built into the data collection. Now, the previous speaker has spoken about Māori communities very briefly in Pacifica, but there's a lot more to be said about that and a lot more questions. It would be good to get the specific wording from the RIS about what it says, because it's pretty damning, and we will go into that. So I won't take up too much time. I want to be really clear with you, Mr Chair, that as we go through, we will be offering new material, but we do want to make sure that every single bit of this bill that we hold ourselves to as parliamentarians and are accountable for, that we get to query it, and we do not want to see truncated debate. So you have our word, we won't filibust, but if we can have the opportunity on behalf of New Zealanders who have not had a select committee phase to interrogate this properly, I think we can get through this afternoon in a productive way.
Okay, Honourable Louise Upston.
Mr Chair, I'm not going to repeat things that I've said in my readings earlier today, but there's some clear misunderstanding about what this bill does and what it doesn't do. So what it doesn't do is touch eligibility for things like the job seeker benefit, sole parent support. It doesn't require additional medical certificates around eligibility. Was very clear, and actually really pleased to see that one of the Labor members that's spoken in an earlier reading clearly understood that. Anybody who receives a benefit and supplementary assistance is required at all times to advise MSD of a change of circumstances. Not everybody does that. So this is really just a catch-all in terms of the 52 weeks to ensure that the circumstances that MSD have on record are accurate. And the example that I did give in an earlier speech was, for example, someone who's receiving the disability allowance as part of that review at 52 weeks, it may well come to light that they have additional needs that are not being factored into the disability allowance that they're getting. So I'm really pleased to hear that the opposition don't want to filibuster, because in many cases there will be those who receive benefits who will get an increase of support as a result of this review. And I want to make the point very clearly, given the exclusion of JobSeeker, for example, that I'm not going to go into the ins and outs of different population groups. I know parties will have some fascination around that, but as members will know, unfortunately, in areas like the JobSeeker benefit, population groups are significantly disproportionately affected, and that is a matter of fact. It's not a matter of debate.
Well, I mean, here's the big question is, from what's coming up from there is, anyone who has had a debt established by MSD, the moment they've decided you owe money, it's established. Not, hey, can we check to make sure we're not making a mistake? They would rather make the mistake, then you have to fight for a $1,500 review of decision hearing to sit there and do that, to get it. They are not transparent on how the debt was created because they don't tell you in a breakdown in your letter it's happened. They just sit there and say, we've created this debt. So, this doesn't actually, to me, the principle behind reviews, great. The execution, though, is it actually going to deliver the right results? Or are we going to have people who have debts that are fictitiously created based on misinformation, poorly done assumptions, misinterpretations of law? I mean, this is a very big concern that's coming out of there with mandatory reviews. And what happens in a review if you're using AI? If there is something wrong, does that mean it gets transferred to a real person, or does it just go bake in the wrong result? And also, the other thing is, are we actually equipped to do it by AI at this point in time? Do we have the systems in place?
No. I had a look at the other regulatory impact statement, but the other regulatory impact statement, I don't have access to this current one that Ingrid Leary just brought up. I would love to have a copy, but I think one thing that we're brushing over, and we need to address this in the strongest way possible, is that we have been denied an ability to go through a select committee process and represent ourselves and how this bill's going to impact us as individuals who are on the benefit. We don't get that opportunity thanks to this going under urgency. And nothing boils my blood more than denying, especially the most vulnerable people in New Zealand, the ability to represent themselves and to speak up. Because it goes to show how little National cares about disabled people. This is just another nail in the coffin for them. I would have loved to have spoken on this. I would have loved.
I would love to sit there and put my 2 cents worth on it to make sure you don't have things such as when debts are created, they literally are near momentarily applied. There is no transparency over the debt. There is no breakdown standard within the letters. I mean, put it this way, if IRD creates a debt against you or issues a penalty, they send you a letter, they tell you why, they give you a breakdown.
Yeah.
MSD, hi there, we've created the debt, we're taking out at $10.50 a week. That is all the letter pretty much says. It doesn't really give much details. It just says, if you disagree with the decision, you can apply for a review of decision.
But you caught what she said at the end. I won't go into population groups. I think that says everything you need to know. I won't look at the data around how this is going to impact Māori people or disabled people or the elderly or women or Pacifica people. All of these people that tend to be more dependent on receiving a benefit than a normal white middle-class working man. It's very, very clear to me in that last statement she made about where her priorities lie. And I can go, I have taken so many damn notes on this. And I can go into... You
spend an hour talking about notes.
Yeah, I mean, I could have written a book about this. But yeah, I can the regulatory impact statement that I shared in the chat that people can actually look. If you go to page 25, it states approximately 42% of clients on job seeker support due to a health condition, injury, or disability are limited in their capacity to undertake full-time employment. Requiring an additional reapplication will see clients engaging more often so they are well prepared to return to work when they transfer to job seeker support, work ready as their condition allows. Now, here's the problem with that statement, okay? We don't have data on how many people are on job seeker support that should be on supported living payment.
No, they don't collect it.
They won't collect it. No. And on page 26, we follow up on the same regulatory impact statement. Implementation of the 26-week reapplication changes is expected to result in a drop-off of clients on job seeker support following their reapplication. For example, due to clients not reapplying as their circumstances have changed and they know they are no longer eligible, and will affect expenditure on benefits of related expenses. This is expected to reduce net BOR, that's the anagram, costs by 37 million over 5 years. So why are we doing this? The savings we're getting from this, right? It's not going to be worth the increased costs to healthcare, the increased costs associated with homelessness, the increased costs associated with a lack of production because these people are not being supported into work. There are more costs associated with doing this than we're saving. So it's like Louise has purposely ignored the costs and the benefits.
Yeah. Okay. Anything you want to mention, Ray?
No, I'm still catching up. Thanks for handling so I could have a break.